Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the Black Excellence, Legacy, and Leadership panel discussion. I'm Anirudh Goyal. I'm the Chief of Staff here at REN, and it's my privilege to moderate today's panel discussion. We'll start off with a land acknowledgement. REN acknowledges that we gather, work, and heal on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinungtan peoples. Our healthcare team and community provide health services within the Haldimand Tract Treaty of 1784 that granted 6 miles on either side of the Grand River to the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. So thank you for being here today and for taking the time to be part of this important conversation. It's truly an honor for me to stand with you at the Black Excellence, Legacy, and Leadership panel and to help open a space that recognizes, celebrates, and learns from the leadership, contributions, and lived experiences of Black professionals in healthcare. As Chief of Staff, this is one of my first opportunities to speak at an event centered on inclusion. I want to begin by acknowledging something openly. I am not Black, and I do not carry the lived experience that many of our colleagues and community members do. What I can offer and what I am committed to is listening, learning, and using my role to support environments where equity, respect, and belonging are not just values we speak about, but realities people feel every day. Black History Month is a time to honor legacy. It is a time to recognize resilience, leadership, courage, and excellence that have shaped communities, institutions, and systems. It is also a time for reflection on where progress has been made and where we still have work to do. We know that leadership is not about titles or positions. It is about influence, presence, and the courage to challenge systems so that care becomes more equitable, more compassionate, and more just. The leaders you will hear from today embody that in different ways. Through their work, their advocacy, and their commitment to community, they continue to shape a better future for patients, families, and colleagues alike. I hope we all leave this session not only inspired by the stories and insights shared, but also more thoughtful about the role each of us plays in shaping a workplace and a healthcare system where everyone feels seen, respected, and valued. We recognize that this topic may bring up difficult or personal feelings for some individuals. If you find this is the case, please consider reaching out to trusted colleagues, having a conversation with your manager, or accessing the supports and resources shared by our health and well-being team. Thank you to the Black Health Professional Collective for sponsoring this event and for the leadership you continue to show. And thank you to our panelists for sharing your time, your perspectives, and your journeys with us. So we'll move on to the agenda. If we can go to the next slide, please, Michelle. For today's event, we'll recommend some guidelines for engagement before introducing you all to our stellar panelists. Then we'll dive into the panelist discussion with some questions about identity, healthcare, and allyship. We'll finish with a question and answer period where you, the audience, can submit questions for our panelists, and then wrap with some closing remarks. We can go to the next slide, please, Michelle. As we move into this conversation, it's important to ground ourselves in the realities that shape the experiences of Black patients and communities within our healthcare system. Data from the Black Health Alliance, drawn from Ontario studies between 2001 and 2012, helps us understand the scale and depth of inequities that have existed over time. During that period, diabetes rates among Black women doubled, increasing from 6 to 12%. Among all ethnic communities studied, Black women experienced the most significant rise in high blood pressure. Research from Ontario Mental Health Studies tells us that people of Caribbean, East, and West African origin have an approximately 60% increased risk of psychosis. Black Ontarians of Caribbean descent experience nearly twice the delay in accessing evidence-based mental health services compared to those of white European descent. We also know that Black Ontarians are more likely to enter care through aversive pathways, such as emergency services, ambulance involvement, or police intervention, rather than through early, supportive, and preventative care. These patterns do not exist in isolation. Anti-Black racism has been recognized as a factor that can influence health outcomes and experiences, acting as a persistent stressor within healthcare systems and the broader social environment. More recent local data reinforces that these disparities are not just historical, they remain relevant to our own region and to the patients and families we serve. Taken together, these statistics point to a clear and ongoing reality. Black communities continue to face disproportionate barriers and inequities in health outcomes, access, and experience of care. To acknowledge this context is to recognize the conditions that make leadership, advocacy, and representation so important. Understanding this context helps us better appreciate the significance of Black leadership in healthcare. Leadership exists within social, cultural, and systemic conditions. Data provides direction, urgency, and purpose, and it also builds trust. Patients are more likely to feel seen and supported when leaders acknowledge the realities reflected in their lived experiences. So we'll move then to some guidelines for engagement. While we are listening to our leaders discuss on the panel, you're encouraged to do the following to get the most out of the session. Please listen actively, stay curious, reflect on your own experiences, and ask open and honest questions throughout. We have hosted this event on Slido so that questions could be submitted anonymously. So please ask away and upvote other questions you may be curious to hear the answers to. If you have a question for a particular panelist, please note that in your question. So we will now turn to our panelists whose leadership, perspectives, and work continues to shape more equitable and inclusive spaces across our system. First, we have Alushin Olayinka. Alushin is a wife, mother of 4 amazing children, nonprofit executive, and doctoral scholar committed to strengthening families and communities. She serves as executive director of Adventure for Change, a registered Canadian charity based in Waterloo, and is a PhD student in the Faculty of Social Work at Wilfrid Laurier University. Alushin brings over 2 decades of leadership experience, spanning organizational development consulting, community development, and social impact initiatives. She serves on the board of REN and Social Venture Partners Waterloo Region. She is a member of the Waterloo Region District School Board's Equity Advisory Group and the Child and Youth Planning Table Steering Committee. Her research and leadership focus on building sustainable, community-led social service organizations that advance equity and create lasting impact for neighborhoods and families. Alushin, welcome. Next, we have Corinne Morgan. Corinne has been with the organization for 15 years, beginning her career as a communication clerk in bed management before moving into management roles in security, risk management, and emergency preparedness. Her experience has given her a strong understanding of hospital operations and the importance of teamwork across departments. Beyond her role, Corinne values mentorship, representation, and honest conversations about growth and opportunity. As a Black woman in healthcare, she believes excellence is about showing up consistently, supporting others, and contributing in meaningful ways that help create a more inclusive and supportive workplace. Next, from the Cancer Center, we have Dr. Ernest Osei. Dr. Osei is Director of Medical Physics at REN, leading a dedicated team delivering high-quality radiotherapy care. He is also an adjunct professor at the University of Waterloo, teaching medical physics, mentoring students, and advancing cancer research. Committed to community service, he chairs the Waterloo Region Immigration Partnership and the Centerville Chicopee Community Association. In 2022, he founded the Alliance for Cancer Care Equity, a Canadian charity supporting patients in Ghana and Kitchener-Waterloo who cannot afford cancer treatment. To Dr. Osei, Black history celebrates resilience, excellence, and the contributions of Black individuals. It honors past trailblazers and calls us to uplift voices, share stories, and advance equity every day. Last but not least, we have Victoria Crowder Banson. Victoria joined Legacy Grand River Hospital in 2019 and Legacy St. Mary's General Hospital in August 2024. Victoria holds a Master of Science in Nursing from York University, a Doctor of Nursing Practice from the University of Minnesota with a focus on health innovation and leadership, and a certificate in healthcare design and innovation. With 30 years of experience across leadership, academia, and point-of-care nursing, her clinical background includes critical care, cardiorespiratory, nephrology, and oncology. Victoria is deeply committed to creating safe, inclusive spaces where emerging healthcare leaders can grow, explore, and fail forward. Through coaching grounded in authenticity and humility, she believes co-creating change is essential to building accountable organizations. She believes that allyship is a deliberate, active practice critical to dismantling systemic barriers, amplifying voices, and sustaining Black excellence, leadership, and legacy in healthcare today. So welcome to all of our panelists. Now that we've had a chance to meet our panelists, let's dive into the discussion. Our first question goes to you, Victoria. Victoria, in your experience, how does Black excellence show up in healthcare leadership? And what does it mean to lead within systems that were not originally designed with equity in mind?
Thanks, Rudy, for the introduction and for the great question. So when I think about Black excellence in healthcare leadership, I think about leaders who are doing more than succeeding. They're transforming systems. It shows up in leaders who bring strong clinical expertise, cultural humility, and clarity of purpose, and who consistently raise the bar for quality, safety, and compassion, while advocating for change that benefits everyone. Leading in systems that weren't designed with equity in mind means navigating structures that may unintentionally reward sameness and silence difference. So from an ally perspective, leadership in this space requires adaptability, persistence, a clear understanding of how systems work. It's about knowing when to work within existing structures and when to challenge them in ways that move the organization and the conversation forward. As an ally, my role is to name and call out inequities when I see them and to use my position to open doors, shift narratives, and create space for Black leaders to lead authentically. Supporting Black excellence is essential to building healthcare systems that are safer, more effective, and more equitable for the communities that we serve. And maybe just to clarify, when I say call out inequities, when I see them, I'm talking about small, everyday actions that shape whether people feel respected and heard, like pausing to ensure names are pronounced correctly, or naming whose ideas are being overlooked, or even asking who might this process or decision disadvantage. These moments matter because they set the tone for inclusion in real time and not just on paper. Allyship doesn't require a title. It just requires consistency, curiosity, and a willingness to turn our values into action.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Victoria. Really insightful reflections on allyship. Thank you. We'll turn next to Dr. Osei. Dr. Osei, does your experience of leadership feel different because you are a racialized leader? If so, in what ways has your identity shaped how you lead or how leadership has responded to you?
I hope you can hear me right. Okay, thank you very much. I will start by saying and acknowledging what you've already said in the past and echoing it that Black History Month is a time, though, to reflect not only on the past, but also on present realities. And I'll frame my answer with one statement like this, and I'll later go a little bit into detail that leadership does not happen in a vacuum. Who we are shapes the way we lead and how the leadership system responds to us. Now to the question of how does my experience in leadership, does it feel different? I would say yes. I remember the initial stages of my leadership. Most of the time I go into a room of 20, 30, 40, 100 people, and I might be the only Black in the room, and sometimes the only male. So the feeling that I don't know whether because I'm the only male or that I'm the only Black. And it makes you more visible in the room. It's a feeling that depending on who you are, it makes you feel a little bit pressured. And you are more visible because everybody sees you in that reality. And in that sense, for some people, it carries some responsibility. Personally, in most of my work, it does not carry that much, but for a lot of people, it carries some responsibility. They need to ensure that you are consistently being proven in what you are doing. But in my way of the leadership, because I know, even if I'm not feeling that, but others might feel that, the way I lead is to show empathy to people that I lead. And be also attentive to inclusion, talk to people to make sure that I really understand them. And for my staff, and especially also my student that comes to me, to create a psychological safety for them to feel at home. And also to mentor intentionally, especially the Black students that I meet them on day-to-day basis, to ensure that they have a future that definitely they hope for. And I do this because I know that some people feel when they enter into any space where they are underrepresented, they will not feel that they don't belong there, but at least they'll have the confidence that they will be there. In my role, being Black and in leadership, it gives two forms of responsibility from the way that I see. One is the director to take care of my department, but the other side is to have an informal role of a mentor to be able to bring others up in the as leaders within the space that I work. So because I have a lot of students, they approach me about how they can move forward into the future and being not only, and that's what I always tell my students, that don't just be satisfied with what you have. Try to get to the peak of whatever you want to be. Because that has been what I have done throughout my life, and that is the encouragement that I give to my students. In the healthcare sector, what I believe is that Black leadership in the healthcare is very important. When we have diversity in leadership, we have broader perspectives, we have better decision making, and it increases trust in the community. I believe that when leadership reflects the diversity of the community that we serve, trust, innovation, both are improved. In conclusion, I'll say that as leaders, I will encourage each and everyone who is listening to head toward being a leader in whatever community that you should be, because leadership is not about only about excellence, right? Leadership is about excellence, but excellence and equity are not opposites. So we should definitely be able to be represented in the community that we serve. And the goal is not just being the only, but ensuring that we are not the last. So we should be able to train others to replace us even when we are not there. For me, if my presence in leaderships make it easier for the next generation to walk into a room without questioning whether they belong there, then to me there is progress.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. I loved your reflections on formal and informal leadership and really bringing people up with us. So I think that's really wonderful. Thank you. So we'll turn now to Corinne. Corinne, can you please share a pivotal moment or turning point in your career that moved you from education or early training into leadership? What helped you recognize that leadership was the right path for you?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rudy. So I don't want to trigger anybody, but COVID was the biggest turning point of my career. Leadership wasn't something that I was actively pursuing at the time. It wasn't. And then the pandemic hit, and it was kind of all hands on deck. You know, it was high stress, and I was kind of asked to step into a supervisory role at the time. It wasn't something that I was sure I wanted to do, but I took the opportunity to test it out, essentially. And what surprised me was how much I actually grew in that space. the work was operational and there was a bunch of problem solving and everybody was quite emotional. But that's the side that stood out to me the most, was the people side of things. Staff were feeling overwhelmed. And then I found myself kind of stepping more into that calming, almost steadying type of support system for frontline staff. And at that point, I realized that leadership wasn't all about having the answers and, necessarily fixing all the problems. It was about being present, especially, when things are feeling quite chaotic. And then I transitioned back to my regular role, and I missed that broader type of impact that I was having on staff and on systems. And then leaders in the organization also at the same time were providing me feedback, because sometimes it's hard when you're just doing your job to recognize that what might feel natural to you is actually a leadership quality. So really having somebody say, the way that you ran that meeting, you were calm, you were cool, you were collected, you gave 3 different options for a solution. You might not recognize that those are leadership qualities, but honestly and truly that they are. And that experience, COVID in itself, it really just changed my perspective. And I realized that once I stepped back into my previous role, that I was missing supporting staff on a different level, and not just getting the work done myself, but also help shaping it and also leading it and bringing it together.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karen. And COVID, I think many of us have challenging memories of that time, but many opportunities, and really nice to hear that reflection on your leadership journey and the humility that the humble approach you've taken to leadership. So thank you. So we're going to come back to Dr. Osei, because Dr. Osei does have to sign off at 12:30. So Dr. Osei, can you tell us what were some of the major hurdles or setbacks that you faced along the way? Were there moments when you questioned whether this was the right path? And what did perseverance look like for you during those times?
Thank you once again for the question. I'll start by saying that not that I knew that I'll be the head of the medical physics department the day I was born. That wasn't the goal. Even the day I entered university, I don't think that was the plan. But I remember I did my undergraduate in Ghana, and I remember quite well that the very first day that I entered the university, I told myself that I am not going to stop education until I have reached the peak, that is with a PhD. And that was my goal. So I completed my undergraduate, worked as a lecturer for 2 years, and get an offer to do my master's in Canada. After my master's, I was definitely struggling to get into my PhD, but a lot of things happened from my supervisor and a whole lot of things that didn't work well. And I was really disappointed that I had to go back to Ghana, because I didn't want to go through any immigration issues. So I packed myself with my family back to Ghana, where I worked for 4 years. I never liked going back, but I'll talk later about it, that to me was one of the things that really is helping me even in my current job. I went and worked as a radiation safety officer for 4 years, got a PhD offer in the UK, and that is where I did my PhD. Then after that, we came to Canada in 2000. I did my training as a medical physicist at Princess Margaret. And then in 2004, started at REN, Legacy Grand River, from 2004 to present. The interesting thing is that for the first 2 years, I was living in Brampton, but I made sure I am at work by 7:30 in the morning, and I leave work at 6:30. And I did that consistently for all the time that I worked. It wasn't surprising that the then head of physics, when he was leaving, encouraged me to apply for the position. He was white, and all my white colleagues there came to me encouraging me to apply for the position. I applied, and then I was given to the position to me. And I've worked well with them. And when I spoke about going back to Ghana, to me, it was a setback. But the training I had in Ghana at that time, where I travel to other countries learning about their radiation safety. At current REN, although I am the head of the medical physics alone, I oversee all radiation safety issues in current REN, even the Legacy Grand River and Legacy St. Mary's. Every question related to radiation safety comes to me, and it's all because of the experience I had in the past. So sometimes some hurdles pushes us up, depending on how we look at it. Some other times we may look at the hurdle as an impediment, but a lot of the time, if you're able to jump over the hurdle, it rather pushes us up. So there have been some ups and downs, but I always look at the positive side of it, and that has definitely pushed me up in whatever position. And a lot of the experience that I have, how I do my work, everything is being geared by the way I have controlled the way that I do my work. I woke up early in the morning. I was talking to the other panelists every day at 4:30. That's when my day starts. And I do my charity work up to 6, get to work by 6:30, 7:30, and leave work at 6. To me, that is how I work. And to me, putting every effort in what you do, that's what I tell my students, that even the things that you think you don't like, do it very well so that in 10 years, you don't look back and regret not doing it well. So to me, whatever that I do, whatever little hard, I try to do is such that when I look back, I don't regret not doing it well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Osei, for sharing that with us. And thank you for being here with us. I know you have to drop off, but thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insights. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll come now to Aleutian. So Aleutian, negative stereotypes are often associated with identity. As a leader, how do you navigate those biases? How intentional are you about how you present yourself in spaces where those perceptions might exist?
Thank you very much, Dr. Guo. I'll start with something Dr. Osei just said a while ago. He says, who we are shapes the way we lead. The other thing I want to say, because for me, that's a wise saying, because he's an elder. The other one is something my dad used to say all the time. He would say, when you are called to serve, you dress up and you go. Now, I brought those two sayings in answering this question because they've guided how I navigate those spaces. What Dr. Osei said and what my dad kind of said says to me, it's an internal job first, because that's what I have control over. I don't have control over how someone sees my hair or sees the way I speak or thinks about my country of birth or something like that. But I have control about how I show up. And so my parents taught me, first of all, to dress how I want to be addressed. And so I remember when I started working in Canada, people would be like, you're dressing too much. You're not going to a bank. You're just going to a customer service space, or you're just going to Grand River Hospital, which was my second job in Canada. Or in this case, you're going to the nonprofit. And then I hear my parents' voice say, ignore them. You dress the way you want to be addressed. And you are intentional about everything you do. That's always my answer to these questions is people would decide how they want to view people like me. That's their business. I have a responsibility to decide how I will show up and prove them wrong all the time. They are not smart in the sciences, and then I have a bachelor's in chemistry. They are not able to work diligently, then I'm very diligent. They leave, they quit early, and then Dr. Osei says, I arrive at 6:30 and I don't leave until 7:30. That's what we do. It's a pressure in a way because it means you have to keep proving yourself. But I don't see it as a pressure. I see it as a price of leadership. And irrespective of where somebody comes from, if they showed up with these values in place, then they will prove that they are worth whatever assignment or whatever responsibility or whatever position or whatever title that has been handed over to them. So that's how I operate as an individual, and that's how I show up every time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aleutian. Dress the way you want to be addressed. I think I'm going to print that and frame it and put it on my desk. Thank you so much. So Aleutian, we'll stay with you and we'll ask this question to both you and Corinne. What role has mentorship played in your journey? How did you find mentors? Or how did mentorship show up for you if it wasn't formal?
Yeah, so I always like to say that I am a product of mentorship. That's something I always have to say. I'm not one of those that can stand up and say I'm a self-made woman. That's not me. And that's the truth. Mentorship found me as early as the age of 6. So I had an amazing cousin living in our house and he took interest in me. I called him this morning ironically because I know I was going to talk about him. And in this almost, I'm trying to do the math, for the something years, he has stayed consistent. And I think that mentorship at the age of 6 influenced many of my paths, and the usefulness of it and how his wife joined that mentorship journey after he got married has made me seek such going forward. So for example, case in point, we moved into Canada 2017. The first thing I looked for was a mentor. I had this background in organizational development and I wanted to continue. So I was looking for people in that industry. Very quickly, I found an amazing woman called Hannah Brown. She still lives in the region, very few kilometers or meters actually away from the hospital. And I met her and said, this is who I am, this is what I do, here's how I desire to go. I landed my Grand River job because of Hannah. And that's why I said it's hard for me to tell my story and not have names, actual names of 5, 6, 7 people that I have ridden on their shoulders. And the question is, how do I find them? Sometimes I'm intentional. The first one was a chance. It was a cousin who saw me, saw potential, and mentored me. But since then, I have been intentional. My second mentor or core mentor was my first boss post-university. My third mentor was my second boss post-university. So again, I've had bosses that invested in me and I held on to because I'm like, yeah, you're not going anywhere. And they've stayed through in my life till today. Like my bosses don't go. You can't go anywhere. Once I meet you and I connect with you, because I will chase you and I will pursue you. And I mentioned Hannah, how I found her. And my latest in quote mentor that is guiding me through the nonprofit, it was I looked for them. And I would ask. I remember when I had that breakfast with Hannah and I said, can you mentor me? She was like, I've never done that before. I was like, I'll tell you how it works. So I was the one sharing what I needed to understand the land called Canada and what I needed as a person. And she was generous enough to open her arms and bring me in. And she's a white woman. So talking about allyship, which I know we will get to, this was someone who heard me, listened to me, held my hands and walked with me. And he's still with me. So again, remember I said, they don't go. Once you start that journey with me, I won't leave you. So I at Christmas, I go to say hello and I bring a gift. And she planted my first garden behind our first house. She brought things when I had my 4th baby at Grand River. Like, that's how it is for me. It's not just that these people give to me. I make sure that I also give back. So it becomes a two-way journey of people investing in each other. But for me, mentorship is critical as a Black woman, as a mother, as a wife, as a leader. It's been such a blessing having mentors and now being able to mentor other people.
Fantastic. And I think that piece of paying it forward is really important and really valuable. Corinne, any thoughts on this question as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Mentorship, honestly and truthfully, I would not be where I am today without a mentor, 2 mentors in particular. The mentorship like I'll focus on is what occurred to me here at Legacy St. Mary's and into Ren. At one point, I was applying to multiple leadership roles, several at one time, because I was trying to grow. I recognized that I was looking for leadership. And so I was just applying, trying to see what would stick. And what I didn't realize at the time was that the president of the organization at the time actually noticed that I had applied to several different positions in the organization, which was quite terrifying. But she reached out and asked to meet with me. She scheduled 20 minutes and I headed up to her office and I was nervous and this could either go really good or this could go really bad, but we're going to go into the office and see what happens. And that conversation was honestly the most impactful of my career. So when I got into her office, she asked me about my long-term goals. And then we talked honestly and openly about the roles that I had applied for and why I was applying to them. And continuing with that honesty, we talked about the leaders that were owning those roles. And she actually pointed me in the direction that she thought would be the best fit for me, because she knew that leader quite well. And she said that leader is actually going to mentor you and make sure that you don't get lost in the mix, and make sure that you continue to build your leadership skills. And what really made me happy in that moment was that, as the president, she took the time to make sure that I was being seen, and that I wasn't going to be lost in the shuffle, and kind of pointed me in the right direction. And she was accurate. She was so correct. The leader that, I actively pursued that role, and the leader signed me on. And that was my strongest mentorship in the organization. That leader knew that it was a big step for me, that I was newer to leadership, and she led by example. So she was modeling difficult conversations that were happening in the organization. She was helping me grow my strategic thinking. And also something I really connected with was her composure. And she gave me the space to build my skills. So it wasn't just about throwing Corinne to the wolves and, seeing if she flies or if she sinks, but it was a gradual learning process. So once I built my skills up in this area, she was like, okay, ready for your next step. She would walk down the hall and she's like, you did great in that. Here you go. Here's the next thing. It was really about that thoughtful development of my leadership skills, which I really, really appreciated. And it has shaped the way that I am a leader. Like today, I've learned that mentorship isn't just about, it doesn't have to be formal. It can just simply be about taking interest in somebody that's on your team, trying to understand their growth, what they're interested in, what they're looking for, and helping them kind of get there. And sending them that education link. Hey, I heard you're interested in this. This is something you might want to sign up and complete and do. So I continue to try to carry that throughout my leadership here at REN. And it was really, really special to me that the leaders, the president and the director at the time, they saw potential in me, and they really chose to invest in it and help grow it, instead of, let's just see kind of what happens.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Corinne. So we'll come for our next question to Victoria and then to Aleutian. What health inequities have you seen most directly impact Black patients, families, or staff? And how can healthcare organizations move beyond symbolic commitments to equity and create measurable, sustainable change for Black communities and Black healthcare professionals? Oh, you're muted there, Victoria.
Let's try. Can you hear me now? Okay. So there are many, but I feel like one of the most significant inequities that I've seen impacting Black patients, families, and staff is fear and mistrust of the healthcare system. And to be fair, that mistrust didn't come from nowhere. It's shaped by lived experience, by histories of not being believed, not being heard, encountering care that feels unsafe and inaccessible. And that mistrust affects how and when people engage with healthcare. And it also shows up for the healthcare professionals who may feel pressure to navigate systems that don't always create space for their voices or experiences. Moving beyond symbolic committees requires organizations to shift from intention to accountability. And that means creating psychologically safe spaces for Black staff to speak up, using race-based data to understand where outcomes differ, and being willing to change processes, not just language, where inequities are identified. When we look specifically at, let's say, cancer care, these inequities become very visible. Black communities often experience lower screening rates, later stage diagnoses, poorer outcomes, and it's not because of lack of awareness, but because trust, access, and culturally responsive care haven't been consistently built into the system. So I think kind of goes without saying, we need to partner with Black communities in meaningful ways rather than designing solutions for them.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Aleutian, over to you, please.
Yes. I'll start with two comments around the inequalities. And the first one is something I heard from the community we serve. So at Adventure for Change, we serve a community in North Waterloo, so Sunnydale, Albert Street, High Street, and it's heavily newcomer patients or people. And in asking, one thing they keep saying to me is, and maybe this is not hospital bound, but I'm sure it's connected somehow. My family doctor doesn't take me serious. So for me, it's how does that reflect in the hospital? If I say I'm in pain, they're like, but you're fine. And I've heard that over and over again. So what happens now is self-care. Since they're not going to take me serious and I know the symptoms I have, I'll go to the pharmacy, I'll buy something so the pain can go down. So the problem is the pain is down, but that pain is just a symptom of something bigger and we don't get that bigger thing in time. So I'm hoping that the past stereotypes that we've had around the amount of pain Black people can hold and their threshold for pain can be a thing of the past in the community that we are in Waterloo region, so that every single patient, irrespective of how they look, get the kind of care that they request at the time they request it. Our brothers in the US, we had that experience of the woman who was in labor and was being told, no, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine. And she had that child a few minutes after. I don't know where that case has gone, but that's a reality of what some people have experienced. And I'm hoping that changes will come to this kind of thing. The second thing is existing documentation. The systems that were built, so we're talking about systems built without equity. How do we recognize things in Black people? And the only examples I have, again, might not be hospital bound, but it will make sense in the context of healthcare. I remember when I took my first aid training in Canada, and I think they were talking about hypothermia or something like that. They said, they were mentioning colors, a blue, gray, bright red. And I started laughing. So the instructor said, why are you laughing, Oluseun? And I said, I'm going to be dead before you realize that I have hypothermia, because you're looking for bright red and blue gray, and I will never turn those colors. And it became a joke in class, but it's true. And so that training had some people in mind when it was designed. And I'm wondering what is in the hospital systems right now that had some people in mind when it was designed, so that if I was sick, they are not looking at me and recognizing. Whereas, and that's where I was going to switch to on the issue of, there was a word that you used, Black healthcare professionals getting equity, is that they know our mothers will just press the nail of a female, and they know she's pregnant. They would dilate and they knew. You didn't need to tell them. It didn't matter how young you were. Therefore, there is cultural knowledge and native knowledge that Black health professionals hold that the systems cannot see. When I say systems, I actually mean Cerner. And so how do we harness that native and cultural knowledge that guides healthcare in systems like this? I have an auntie in Alberta who, when she first came, maybe 30 years ago, they were going to deliver triplets, and there was panic about delivering this triplet because I think one of them was ready to come out, so it wasn't going to be a C-section. And she was an OB-GYN from Nigeria. And so she came in and said, I can do it because she's done it and she's in that hospital. They're like, no, you came in just 6 months ago. And she was like, I've brought out tons of this. Somebody dared to trust her to say, let's see her do it. She did. She's still there X number of years after. That's what I mean. There was, in addition to now being a professional in the Canadian context, there was native intelligence, cultural wisdom that she had. And I'm wondering how those will transition into current healthcare so that those who need that kind of care actually get it. My family doctor is Syrian, but she speaks my language, like not my language, but my medical language. That's why I've stayed with her. Because when I go there are things she just says that we connect. And I can't change her in the world. And I know she's not going to die. She's going to be with me for a long time. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you very much. really insightful reflections on helping our patients feel seen and heard and feel valued in the system. Thank you. So our last question before we transition to the question and answer period goes to Victoria. Victoria, can you tell us what role does allyship play in advancing health equity, and what does meaningful allyship look like in practice beyond policies and statements?
Sure. You can hear me, right? Okay. So I believe that allyship plays a critical role in advancing health equity because systems don't change just because we name inequities. They change when people with influence actively help remove them. Policies and statements matter, but on their own, they don't shift day-to-day experiences for patients or staff. Meaningful allyship shows up in small, consistent actions that often go unnoticed. It looks like paying attention to whose voices are missing in decisions, and intentionally bringing them in. It's questioning standards of practice when outcomes aren't equitable and being willing to pause processes that unintentionally disadvantage certain groups. It's using data to expose inequities, but also listening to lived experiences with that same level of respect. As an ally, it means holding ourselves and our organizations accountable. When commitments to equity don't translate into action, we need to make sure that real allyship is ongoing. Sometimes it's uncomfortable work, but it's essential if we're serious about building healthcare systems that deliver equitable outcomes for everyone. I've been asked how allies can help hold others accountable, and I think they can do that by actively supporting our employee resource groups, led events like today, joining ERGs as allies to help ensure voices are heard and acted on, and by asking leaders how equity commitments are being measured, resourced, and sustained. And I underline sustained. Allyship also means sharing power by creating pathways to opportunities, whether they're leadership or otherwise, and backing ideas in rooms people aren't in. Speaking up when progress stalls. It isn't about calling people out, but it's about calling people in, setting expectations for respect and making equity part of how we lead every day, not just something we just talk about.
Wonderful. So thank you very much, Victoria, and thank you to all of our panelists for that very insightful discussion. We'd now like to hear from our audience. So we'll move into our audience questions for our panelists. As a reminder, if you have a question for a specific panelist, please note that in your question. So let's see what questions we have. Okay, so leading in systems with little equity or allyship can be exhausting. How can Black leaders protect their energy and make impact when feeling isolated? Great question. Who would like to take a first stab at this question?
I can start.
Thank you.
And I think my answer is, I don't think it's about that system or that person or that committee or that circle, but about me. So one of the things one of my mentors has taught me is the only competition I have is me. And so my assignment is always, how was I yesterday? How better can I be tomorrow? And as I said that, I'm sure someone is rolling their eyes because that is hard, but it's the truth. I sit in that space today where I'm sitting on many systems, spaces, and if I try to impress those systems, I'll be drained, and honestly, I will die. And I know that, and I acknowledge that. And so what I do is, who am I today? How can I be better than that person tomorrow? And so I do everything that I do for myself and my family. My family is key to me, very important. And as I do that, when the strain of systems comes against me, and it does all the time, when I have to cry, I cry. I had a choice to live very close to where I work when I started 4 years ago. And I said no, because I needed 16 to 18 minutes to drive and cry within my first year of working in this space. And that's the truth. And so I would cry home, park in front of my house and cry a few more, feel good, and go get ready to engage my family. So there's that place. There's a place of dealing with the emotions and all of those things. Journaling, I journal and I get therapy and all of that. And ensure that I am well. Because at the end of the day, one day I will no longer be in that space. But am I well? I will no longer be part of that system or that process, but am I well? And so I insist that the wellness of the individual is the most important, which includes when it's time to get out. I recognize that time, pack my baggage, and move on to the next thing, even if it's going to pay less, even if it's going to cost me the fame, popularity, position that he has, if it's going to stress me, injure me, hurt me, then there must be a time that I'll say enough is enough and move on. But for as long as I choose emphasis on choice to be there for whatever reason, choice of finance, choice of settling down, choice of I don't have a choice, then I must be well. That's how I see it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aleutian. Corinne or Victoria, did you want to answer that question as well?
Oh, I would just echo exactly what Aleutian was saying. I definitely do take my time. Like I know what time I'm starting work, what time I'm ending work, and I make sure that I reconnect with the things that I love and the things that I enjoy. So like my animals, nature, family, friends. I love watching sports. So like I do try to pull away from those heavy type topics. And it is important to continue to show up in whatever capacity you can if you are available. But it's also just equally as important to step away and say, okay, this is not a battle I can fight right now, and maybe try to revisit it, next week, the week after, however long it takes, but really just, take care of yourself first because, you only have one life to live and it's important that you live it well.
Great. Thank you very much. So we have another question in the chat. Do the panelists feel that more Black representation is required at REN in senior leadership roles? And if so, how do we get there? We'll open that for the panel.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting conversation. I mean, even just kind of setting up this panel, like it was evident that, maybe there should be more diversity on leadership. And it's not just, across REN, like it's across healthcare in general. It's, recognizing those people, those staff members that are not white, and how do we build them and how do we grow them, how do we recognize them, connecting with them, and supporting them in their journey. There's places for all of us, and it's just about mentoring them to get there, and taking the time to understand maybe they're not being seen because of this reason, and supporting them that way. But I definitely, there's always room to grow across any organization for sure.
Thank you, Corinne. Anyone else?
I'll add from the how perspective, because I echo everything Corinne said. And it's I heard stories about people who came from Saudi Arabia, for example, and they had been chief nursing people in those places and got to REN and had to start from the beginning. So the question is there, at what time will there be something that allows us get people based on what they've done and what they already have and the experiences that they bring, and on that basis recommend them for leadership as soon as they get the cultural element of REN, for example. The other one will be things I've heard from, and I'm not going to mention organizations that they've done where there's intentional mentorship that says, if this, I mean, I experienced that with Victoria. Sorry, I have to mention your name because she was my director when I was in professional practice at the Legacy Grand River Hospital, where there was intentionality about those of us that did post a project to continue something. So that intentionality of leaders, not like Dr. Osei said, not from a point of view of numbers and mere representation, but from a point of view of Dr. Osei is doing the job and his colleagues say, apply for it. As opposed to, even though he's doing the job, we bring somebody from outside because he doesn't look the part. That's what I'm referring to. So if he's doing the job and he has the competence and the expertise and the experience, am I not just an ally, but there's a word that people use, like I campaign for you. I can't remember the word right now. I'm the one that tells you to say, have you guys seen this person? This person is solid. This person does excellent work. And I become your campaigner in spaces that you will not have access to. I'm speaking somewhere in the next few weeks. And when I heard how my name came up, it's exactly that kind of person I'm describing. That's not a space that I normally would be called to come speak at. But there was someone, an advocate in there who doesn't look like me, but said, have you checked this person out? We need more people like that that are not Black to do that work in REN. That's what I'm saying.
And if I can just add to that, I think to Aleutian and Corinne's point, from an ally perspective, that is the point. It's not a sales pitch. It's a Aleutian does great work. Corinne does great work. They are the right people in these positions to give the opportunity to, or to speak to, or maybe you should meet with. So it's opening the door. And sometimes that, from what I've heard, is the largest challenge of I can't get a seat at the table, so I don't know how I'm supposed to, enjoy the meal because I can't even get there. And so sometimes it's okay to stand at the back of the room and let other voices prevail. And so that, and thank you for that kind comment, Aleutian. But as a leader, Aleutian is on our board. And when I saw her after she'd left REN, and the first time she said, you're on the board, and I'm like, that is amazing. Because you have to be able to see people that look like you and people that are like you to believe that you can do it. And that's a truth.
Absolutely. Thank you to all three of you. Our next question, do each of you feel REN is on the right track for growing our cultural knowledge and empowering leadership for everyone?
I will speak as a board member. And I don't know if this is out there yet, but there's a lot of work being done right now with the Indigenous side of things to know more, to learn more, to engage more, to be intentional, not just from a check, tick the list kind of thing. And I sense engagements like this is part of that process. Now, can we score ourselves 90%? Maybe not. But I believe, as I sit on the board now, and I've said this to those that care to listen to me, there's a lot more intentionality towards, so like there's a journey. And I know with journeys, you don't see day one. Honestly, it doesn't just happen, but there is a journey. And if we continue as we have started, I believe that in a few years, we will be where we all dream to be. There will always be the bad example that will not align with the big picture, but from a big picture perspective, I feel and I am excited that REN is on a good journey of being intentionally more culturally informed, more culturally humble, and more culturally relevant in the things that we will do. So I'm very hopeful.
Thank you, Aleutian. Any other takers on that one? If not, we can move on to the next question. So this one's for you, Corinne. So the question says, thank you, Corinne, for sharing your experience with succession building. What advice would you give leaders on mentorship and equitable opportunities?
Meet with your staff. There's some really good eggs out there. Just meet with them, connect with them, talk to them. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. It could be 5-10 minutes just to understand them, even just on a human level. I know that managers have like a lot of staff. I know departments get busy, but even just 5-10 minutes makes somebody feel seen and heard, because that person might not even know things that maybe roles that are coming up in the future, or they might not know about education that exists or that's rolling through our emails. Just connect, just try. That's my biggest suggestion, and that's what I do. Even in your one-to-ones, just take the moment to say, hey, like, let's just talk about you on a personal level. What are you into? What are you interested in? Where do you see yourself going here at Ren? Those conversations are the most meaningful, or they were the most meaningful for me. And those are the conversations that I continue to have with all staff members across Ren. That would be my biggest suggestion.
Thank you, Corinne. And thinking back to the story you told about the president taking the time to sit down and meet with you, that really resonates. So thank you for sharing that reflection. So here's another question that we'll put to the panel. How do you lead authentically while navigating different environments, especially when you're underrepresented or underestimated? Hits on some themes that we've already chatted about a little bit, but anything any of our panelists would like to add on that topic?
I'll just say, 'cause that's a tough one, because that's something I've experienced in this current role. I believe you must have. I have had people that I could pick my phone and call when I was going through those things. That's the truth. Because I was stepping into very big shoes in this role that I have right now. And so all of those things, I experienced all of those things. It was tough. But I had people that I could pick my phone, irrespective of the time of the day, and say, I'm done. And that was usually my first thing to say, I'm done, and I'm crying. And when they would listen, they wouldn't say a word. And when I'm done talking, I feel better already. That's when they begin to affirm me and remind me of the things that I have done, and celebrate my leadership and celebrate my person and help me reset to continue. And there were times they'll say, is this it? Do you want to move on? Do you want to get out of the kitchen? Like they helped me process my leadership. And so I think one of the things, and I'm not saying this is the only thing, that we will all need in those heavy spaces are those people that can affirm us, affirm our leadership, remind us of who we are, despite what we're going through and despite what we're hearing and despite what we're experiencing. And they will hold us. And if they are present people, because some of my people were not present, they are way far away, then they will show up and also give hugs. I remember when I had lost someone very dear to me, my dad specifically, and one of them heard how I was treated in a space I belonged to. And he sent me edible arrangements. And the card that came with this said, why do you need flowers that you can't eat when you can have the ones you can eat? And I just cried. And I was eating the fruit and I was crying. But I think about it now and I say, I'm glad I had, because he heard me. So it was he knew exactly what I needed was something to make me laugh and misbehave and celebrate, even though the reality was still there. So yeah, I don't think those things will change in a long time. I might be wrong. While they don't change, as we take care of ourselves, let's find support systems, people that actually care, that we can run to, and they can help us get ourselves back.
Thank you, Aleutian, for that open reflection and the vulnerability that you've shared. Anyone else on that question? Okay, so we have another question here. Thank you so much for sharing. How do you define success now compared to earlier in your journey? Does it look different now that you're in leadership?
Honestly, that is a little bit of a tough one for me to answer. I'm not sure how I measure my success. I'm probably not very good at identifying it. But I think when it comes to leadership, I'm just sometimes very thankful. I mean, just make it simple, making it through the day, making it through the week, making it through the month, and having meaningful connections, or reviewing a policy and being like, oh, okay, they heard me on that point. They are taking it under consideration. Those just having people open their ears a little bit more, open their eyes a little bit more, I think is a way that I can sometimes see success. But I would say for me personally, it's a little bit hard for me to measure from even my early days. I feel like I'm doing a lot of the same work, a lot of the same conversations, but I would say like those little moments in time where you're like, oh, that person actually heard me. I was successful in that. Those things kind of stick out to me.
Let me add, in addition to that, because that's a yes for me, and milestones. So the past, I would think very far and have very big things I wanted to do. These days, and I don't know how many years now these days have become, I just celebrate small wins, like the smallest wins. It doesn't matter what that is. And so, like it was mentioned, I'm a PhD student and I completed my coursework December last year. I threw a party. I celebrate. It was like, yeah, coursework done, celebrate, have a party, enjoy. I binge watch a movie. I just did something extra, and for somebody's like, girl, you still have 3 years. I'm like, you don't get it. I finished my coursework. So I am very intentional about celebrating small wins. And now I know when I desire to complete my comprehensive exam, and I have a plan of what to do when I complete that comprehensive exam. That's how I live these days, because it's the only way to celebrate different successes that I have. A kid gets into university, we're having a party because that kid was like, will I ever get in? Da, 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 da. And then now you're in. And then somebody is going to be 10. Oh no, we're in trouble. We're going to have. It's the stage of life where every single thing that happens, it just happened. We're having a party. Whether that's a popcorn party or it's a jollof rice party, we're having a party. Just so that there's something that keeps us all going. So for me, I think joy has become a measure of success. It's done, success. It brings joy, success. That's my new definitions in the last few years.
Awesome. Always room for more joy. Thank you for that. So I think that has brought us to the end of the questions in the chat. Before we close, I would like to invite each of our panelists to share one brief final reflection. This could be a thought, a hope for the future, or a message that you would like colleagues to carry forward. Aleutian, may we start with you, please?
Okay. The world will choose how it's going to respond to every kind of human being, irrespective of color, faith, fashion, hair type. We have responsibilities to decide how we will respond and not react to those realities. So I encourage everybody on this call to choose joy, to choose hope, to choose faith, to find a friend, and to celebrate hard when we get to those wins, one day at a time.
Thank you so much for that very positive and uplifting message, Aleutian. Victoria, to you, please.
I think to build on what Aleutian said is for allies, I always track back when I'm doing something to Robert Frost's poem and Two Paths Diverged. And I chose the hard one, not because it was easy. And this work is not easy. This work is sitting in the muck, admitting a lot of things that you may or may not want to admit as an ally, that you might have bias leanings or you have racist leanings. But that's the first job. So you have to sit in the discomfort and you have to reflect and then move forward. And I will tell you, I don't always get it right. I get it wrong a lot. And I rely on my allies in the Black community and other communities that help me unpack feelings that I'm having or questions that I'm trying to understand. But I think authenticity and humility and asking those questions and finding your people, the people who will help you navigate through those questions, because there are not always going to be people that will help you live in discomfort. They'll want you to figure it out on your own, which is okay. But once you find the person or the people who help you have those authentic conversations that say, how do we do better? How do we move forward? How do we not let it happen again? Those are the things that I think from an ally perspective that for me matter. It's humility and authenticity, and just, you got to ask the questions, because if you don't talk about it, nothing's going to change.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and the authenticity and the humility really resonate with everything you've shared today, so thank you. So Karen, last word goes to you, please.
Awesome. I would just echo everything that Aleutian and Victoria has said. It's a long, long journey. The only thing that I'll add is that, you know, feel free to reach out to one of us if you are, you know, having these difficult conversations, or you're looking for support, or you're wondering what the next step is. You know, I offer myself up as a safe space. So if anybody needs to reach out, please just do so. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Corinne. And I think such an important thing to offer that kind of support from somebody in a leadership role. So thank you so much for saying that. So to all of our panelists, thank you for your leadership, your courage, and for the examples that you set across our organization and within the communities you serve. We're going to bring the session to a close. On behalf of REN, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for the Black Excellence Legacy and Leadership panel. Today's discussion reminds us that leadership is shaped by experience, identity, and resilience. It also reminds us that representation and mentorship matter, and that meaningful allyship requires continued action from all of us. Again, we're deeply grateful to all of our panelists for sharing their stories and their perspectives, and to the Black Health Professional Collective for sponsoring and supporting this important event. Thank you for being here and for taking part in this important conversation for REN. Bye for now.